I told my girlfriend that her body no longer attracted me after 3 years together, and I almost destroyed our relationship over a conversation I should never have avoided. I never thought a sentence so short could do so much damage. No shouting, no insults, no cheating, just one sentence. And still, it was enough to break something we had been building for 3 years. We had been together since we were 22. She was the kind of person who doesn't need to draw attention, yet somehow always has it. It wasn't just her looks. It was the way she spoke, the way she listened, the way she laughed when something genuinely amused her. At the beginning, everything was easy. Too easy. We saw each other every day. We cooked together, watched shows, went out with friends, and the sex, well, the sex was incredible. Natural. Effortless. I never had to think about it. It just happened. But over time, something started to change. Not all at once. Not like in the movies where everything falls apart in one dramatic scene. It was quieter. Like a light slowly dimming, until one day you realize you're already in the dark. At first, I thought it was stress. Work. Routine. Exhaustion. Easy excuses. Every time she tried to initiate something, I found a way to avoid it without making it too obvious. I'm tired. I have to get up early tomorrow. I'm not feeling great today. She never pressured me. Never. And I think that made it worse, because she started looking at me differently. Not with anger, but with doubt. As if she was trying to understand what was happening without having any clues. Months went by like that. Months. And in all that time, we never talked about it. Not once. And it wasn't because I didn't know what was going on. I knew perfectly well. I just didn't want to say it out loud, because saying it would make it real. And if it was real, then I'd have to face something I didn't know how to handle. The truth was this: I was no longer attracted to her body. It's horrible to say, even now. Especially because it wasn't something that happened because she let herself go or anything like that. No, she was still the same person, but her body had changed a bit over the years. Nothing extreme, nothing anyone else would even notice. But I did, and every time I noticed it, I felt worse about myself. Because it wasn't fair, it wasn't logical, and it definitely wasn't something I could say without sounding like the worst person in the world. So I did the most cowardly thing I could do. I avoided it. I avoided the topic. I avoided the contact. I avoided the uncomfortable conversations. And little by little, I started avoiding her. Until one night, everything exploded. It was a Friday. We had ordered food, we were watching a show we weren't even that into, and she was quieter than usual. I noticed. Of course I noticed. But I did what I had been doing for months. Nothing. Until she paused the episode. Without saying anything first. Just, pause. That small gesture already felt like an alarm. She turned toward me, and there was that look again. But this time it wasn't doubt. It was something heavier. Something that had been building up for far too long. Do you not like me anymore? It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't dramatic. It was direct. And that made it so much worse. I felt like someone had pinned me against a wall. No way out. No excuses. No time. I could have lied. In fact, I probably should have lied. It was the easy option. The safe option. The option that would have avoided everything that came after. But I didn't. And to this day, I don't know if that was honesty or just stupidity. I looked at her. She was staring straight at me. Waiting. Needing an answer. And then I said the sentence that changed everything. Not like before. Silence. The kind of silence that isn't empty, but filled with all the things that aren't being said. I watched something in her face change. Not instantly. It was like a crack that starts small, and then spreads. What does that mean? I still had a chance there. I could have softened it. I could have fixed it. I could have taken it back. But I didn't. It means, I'm not attracted to you the same way anymore. And in that moment, I knew I had crossed a line I couldn't undo. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She didn't say anything for a few seconds. And honestly, that was what scared me the most. Because when someone doesn't react, it's because something much deeper is happening inside. Finally, she spoke. But her voice didn't sound the same anymore. Since when? That question, that damn question, was worse than all the others. Because now I hadn't just hurt the present. I had the power to destroy the past too. And that's when I understood something far too late. It wasn't just what I was saying. It was everything I had kept silent for months. I looked at her. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't know what to say. I didn't answer right away. And that silence was my worst answer. Because when you say nothing, the other person starts filling in the gaps for you. And they almost never do it in your favor. Since when? She repeated the question, but this time more slowly. Colder. I swallowed. My throat felt dry, like every word would scrape on the way out. I don't know, for a while. Mistake. Big mistake. I saw her eyes change in that instant. It wasn't just pain anymore. It was something worse. Reconstruction. Like she was replaying every moment from the past few months, but now through a different lens. For how long? There it was again. That pressure. That feeling of digging deeper with every answer. A few months, she closed her eyes. She didn't cry, but she took a deep breath, like she needed to brace herself to not break right there. And all this time, what? I didn't understand. Or maybe I did, but didn't want to admit it. What do you mean? She opened her eyes, and now there was something different. It wasn't just sadness. It was anger. But not explosive anger. The kind that comes when someone feels betrayed. That all this time you've been pretending. There it was. The word I had been avoiding. Pretending. I wasn't pretending even as I said it. It sounded weak. Unconvincing. Then explain it. and I didn't know how. Because there wasn't an explanation that didn't sound horrible. It's not that I don't want to be with you, it's just, I stopped. Because anything after that just was going to make it worse. Just what? Not a question. A demand. It's changed a little for me. Another bad choice of words. My body, direct again. No softening it. No way around it. And this time, I couldn't dodge it. I nodded. Barely. But enough. And that was it. That's when something actually broke. She stood up from the couch slowly. She didn't throw anything. She didn't yell. She didn't make a scene. But the way she moved away from me, it was like I had suddenly become someone completely different. Okay. That's all she said. Okay. And she started walking toward the bedroom. Wait, I followed her. Because in that moment, for the first time, I felt like I was really losing her. She went into the room and opened the closet, pulled out a suitcase. And that hit harder than any scream. What are you doing? I knew the answer. Still, I asked. I'm not going to stay somewhere I have to question whether my partner even wants me. Every word, direct, precise, no raised voice. That's not what I meant, and there I was, trying to fix in seconds what I had ignored for months. Then tell me what you meant. Silence again. But now it wasn't confusion. It was judgment. Because she wasn't trying to understand anymore. She was deciding. I love you, another useless sentence in that moment. But that's not what we're talking about. She cut me off. No hesitation. We're talking about the fact that you felt this way for months, and never said anything. And she was right. I thought it would pass. I didn't even finish the sentence. Because I didn't believe it myself. Pass. She turned to me. And this time there was something sharper in her eyes. You thought my body was just going to magically change so you'd be attracted to me again. I didn't answer. Because any answer was a loss. Or did you think you were just going to keep avoiding this forever? Each question was harder than the last. And the worst part, she wasn't wrong about any of them. I just didn't want to hurt you. That was my final defense. The worst one of all. Because the moment I said it, her expression changed completely. Like she had just confirmed something. I didn't want to hurt you. She repeated it, with a small, humorless laugh. You've spent months rejecting me, avoiding me, making me feel like something is wrong with me. Now every word carried weight. And you think that doesn't hurt? Silence. All you did was make it worse. And right there, for the first time in the entire conversation, I felt something different than fear. Guilt. The heavy kind. The kind you can't justify. Because she was right. About everything. She closed the suitcase. I don't know if I want to be with someone who can look at me every day, and not tell me something like this. That sentence, that's the one that really broke me. Because it wasn't about attraction anymore. Or physicality. Or sex. It was about trust. And I had destroyed it without even realizing it. I wish you had told me sooner. It wasn't an accusation. It was worse. It was quiet disappointment. And those are the hardest to fix. She walked out of the room, with the suitcase. And I stayed there, standing still, not knowing whether to run after her, or accept that it was already too late. I didn't stop her. And for a long time, I regretted that. I heard the door close. Not loudly, not dramatically, just close. And that sound was more final than any scream. The apartment fell silent. But it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the kind that weighs on you, like the air itself had grown heavier. I stood there for several minutes, not moving, replaying the conversation in my head, but changing my answers, as if that could help now. Not like before. 4 months. It's changed a little. Each sentence sounded worse than the last. And the most frustrating part was that deep down I knew I wasn't lying. But that didn't make it right. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed on the couch, with the TV on mute, just to avoid the silence. At 3 in the morning, I checked her location. Yeah, that kind of person. She was at her best friend's place. That gave me some relief. But not much. Because the question wasn't where she was. It was whether she was coming back. I texted her. Several times. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. Can we talk, please? Short messages. Desperate ones. She didn't reply. And that made me understand something important. It's not the same when someone is angry at you, as when they're disappointed in you. Anger responds. Disappointment walks away. 2 days passed. 2 days where the apartment felt like a place that no longer belonged to me. Her toothbrush was still in the bathroom. Her clothes were still in the closet. Her favorite mug was in the kitchen. But she wasn't. And all of that started to weigh on me more than I expected. Because in those 2 days, I started to realize something I hadn't considered before. It wasn't just that she felt rejected. It was that I had been disconnecting for months, and didn't want to see it. Not just physically. In conversations. In details. In small things. I had stopped paying attention to her the way I used to. Stopped listening to her the way I used to. Stopped being present the way I used to. And now, all of it was crashing together in a single moment. On the 3rd day, she replied. Just one message. I need time. That's it. And that sentence, even though it wasn't "it's over," it wasn't "everything will be okay" either. It was a limbo. And limbo is dangerous. Because it makes you think too much. A week later, we met. Not at the apartment. Not somewhere meaningful. At a cafe. Neutral. Cold. Safe. When she arrived, she felt different. Not in her appearance. Not in her clothes. In her attitude. There was distance. Not uncomfortable, but clear. We sat down, and for a few seconds, neither of us said anything, until she spoke first. I've thought a lot about what you said. I nodded, not knowing if that was good or bad. And I think what hurt me the most, she paused, wasn't what you said. That surprised me. It was that you never gave me the chance to know before. There it was again. The real issue. If you had told me, she continued, maybe I would have understood. Maybe not. But at least it would have been a decision I was part of too. That sentence left me without an answer. Because it made sense. A lot of sense. But instead, she looked straight at me. You took that choice away from me. And that's when I understood something I hadn't seen before. It wasn't just about attraction. It was about control. I had made the decision for both of us, without saying anything. Do you still feel that way? The question came back. But now, there was no pressure. Just honesty. And this time, I didn't hesitate. Yes, because lying now wasn't going to fix anything. She nodded, as if she already expected that answer. Thank you for saying it. And that hurt more than I expected, because it sounded like goodbye. We didn't argue, and that was the strangest part of all. After that, yes, there were no raised voices, no new accusations, no desperate attempts to convince each other. Just a strange calm, like after a storm has passed, but left everything in disarray. She looked down at her cup, stirred it a little, without really using the spoon. I think that makes it clearer. She said. Clearer? What? I knew the answer. But I needed to hear it. That it's not something temporary. She gave the spoon another slow turn. And it's not something I can fix on my own. There it was. The word neither of us had wanted to use until now. Fix. Because at some point, we had both started treating this like it was a problem with a quick solution. A diet. More exercise. More effort. But that wasn't the point. I never asked you to change. I said. And it was true. But the moment it left my mouth, I realized how bad it sounded. Because I didn't have to ask. She looked up. And this time there was no anger. There was something worse. Clarity. You didn't have to. Silence. When someone you love stops desiring you, you feel it. That sentence hung between us. Heavy. And you start wondering what you did wrong. I looked down. Because I couldn't hold her gaze anymore. You go over everything. She continued. How you look, how you dress, how you act. She paused briefly. And little by little, you stop feeling like you're enough. That's when I understood the real damage. It wasn't just that I had hurt her. It was that I had made her doubt herself. And that doesn't get fixed with an apology. I'm sorry. Again. But this time it sounded different. More aware. Less defensive. I know. She replied. Without harshness. But I don't think this gets fixed just with that. And she was right. Because the problem wasn't one sentence. It was everything that came before it. So, what do we do? That question was the most honest one in the entire conversation. I didn't have a prepared answer. It wasn't a trap. It was real. She took a deep breath. As if she was crossing a line too. I don't know. Silence. But I know what I don't want. She looked up again. I don't want to be in a relationship where I feel like I'm being evaluated all the time. I nodded. Because I couldn't argue with that. I don't want to go to bed wondering if you'll be attracted to me today, or not. Another truth. And I don't want you to stay with me out of habit or guilt. That last one hit hard. Because in that moment, I wasn't sure I could tell the difference between those things. Silence again. But this time, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence where two people are understanding something at the same time. I don't want that either. I finally said. And it was true. I didn't want to see her insecure. I didn't want to feel obligated. I didn't want this to turn into something neither of us enjoyed. But wanting something doesn't always mean knowing how to get it. I think we need space. She said. And even though she had hinted at it before, this time it sounded final. Not just a few days. She clarified. Real space. The kind of space that's scary. Because that kind of space doesn't guarantee things will come back. How long? I asked. She thought for a few seconds. I don't know. That answer again. But now, it didn't feel uncertain. It felt honest. But long enough to know if this still makes sense, or if we're just holding on to what it used to be. And there it was. The final truth. We weren't deciding whether to fix it. We were deciding whether it was still worth trying. We paid the bill, walked out of the cafe, and stood outside for a few seconds, not knowing how to say goodbye, because it wasn't a see you later anymore. It was a we don't know what comes next. She took a step back. Take care, she said. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt during the entire conversation. Real fear. Not of having hurt her, but of truly losing her. The space turned out to be bigger than I expected. At first, I thought it would just be a few uncomfortable days, maybe a week, but the days started stacking up, one on top of the other, without her. And the strange part is that at the beginning, it didn't hurt as much as I imagined. There was a kind of calm, like I had finally stopped avoiding something. There was no tension in the air, no awkward glances, no excuses to come up with, just silence. But silence, when it stays too long, starts to speak. The first week, I filled it with distractions. Work, friends, going out more than usual. Anything that kept me from thinking too much. And it worked. A little. Until the second weekend came. The kind where you have no plans. Where nothing pulls you out of your own head. That's when everything started to fall. I woke up late. Walked around the apartment, and for the first time, it felt empty. Not because things were missing, but because she was missing from the small things. The coffee she always left half finished. The notes she stuck on the fridge. The way she always left a light on at night. Details I never even noticed before. and now, they were impossible to ignore. I sat down on the couch, the same one where everything started, and I asked myself a question I had been avoiding. Had I really stopped being attracted to her, or had I just stopped seeing her? Because there's a difference, and it's an uncomfortable one. I started remembering things, not her body. Her, the way she laughed when something genuinely surprised her, the way she talked fast when she was excited, the way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention, and that's when something didn't add up. Because if I truly wasn't attracted to her, why did all of that still carry weight? Why did it still matter? I tried to be honest with myself, for the first time in months, and the answer wasn't clear. It wasn't a simple "I'm not into her anymore." It was messy. Like at some point, I had stopped paying attention to what was right in front of me. Like routine had replaced curiosity. Like I had assumed I already knew her completely, and stopped looking at her as someone who could still surprise me. And that changes the way you see a person, even physically, because attraction isn't just what you see, it's what you feel when you look. And I had been feeling less for months, but now, without her, I started to feel something again, and that confused me even more, because it came late. It always comes late. In the third week, she texted me a simple message: "Can we talk this week?" My reaction was immediate. Yes, whenever you want. Too fast, too obvious. But I didn't care about seeming desperate anymore, because at that point, I wasn't even sure what I was losing exactly, and that's scarier than losing something clear. We agreed to meet again, but this time, not at a cafe, at the apartment. That detail made me more nervous than I expected, because that place wasn't neutral anymore. It was where everything had happened. The day she arrived, she was on time, as always. I opened the door, and for a second, everything felt normal. Too normal, but it didn't last. She walked in, looked around, and I noticed something. She felt it too, like that place wasn't the same anymore. We sat down, again on the couch, the same starting point, but this time, we weren't the same people. "How have you been?" she asked. "Good, I guess." Half a lie. "And you?" "Better." That word gave me relief and fear at the same time, because better doesn't always mean I want to come back. There was a short silence, but not uncomfortable, just careful. "I thought a lot about all of this," she said. I nodded. Me too, and it was true, and I think I understood something important. She shifted slightly on the couch. "This didn't start when you said what you said." That surprised me. It started long before that. There it was again. The root. When you stopped talking to me about what you were feeling. Direct. But it didn't hurt the same anymore. Because now, I could see it too. I didn't try to defend myself. Not this time. Because what she said wasn't an attack. It was a description. Yes. That was all I replied. And for the first time since all of this started, I didn't feel like I was losing the conversation. Because it wasn't an argument anymore. It was understanding. She nodded slightly, as if that answer confirmed something she already knew. I think I also stopped saying things. I didn't expect that. I looked at her, and there was something different in her expression. It wasn't guilt, but it wasn't just analysis either. It was responsibility. "What do you mean?" She took a few seconds, not out of doubt, but because she was choosing her words carefully. "There were moments when I noticed you were distant." I nodded, but instead of asking you directly, I let it slide. That surprised me more than it should have. "Why?" She shrugged lightly. "Because I didn't want to hear an answer that would make me feel insecure." Silence. That sentence hit differently, because suddenly, it wasn't just me avoiding an uncomfortable conversation. It was both of us, each from a different place, but with the same result. "I didn't want to seem needy," she continued. "I didn't want to be the one always asking for explanations." She looked down for a second, and I think in that process, I started ignoring things that did matter. That's when the conversation truly shifted. It was no longer "you did this." It became "we both let this happen." And that, even if it doesn't erase the damage, makes it clearer. I thought that if I didn't say it, it would disappear. I said. She let out a small laugh. Not mocking, more like recognition. "Yeah, me too." Silence again, but this time, lighter. Like we were finally talking about the same problem. "So, now what?" I asked. Not with desperation, with real curiosity. She thought for a moment. "Now I think we have two options." She adjusted herself on the couch. "We can try to rebuild this." She paused. "But for real." The way she said that made it clear she wasn't talking about going back to the same thing. "And the other is accepting that we let this break, and not trying to force it." Direct. No drama. But heavy. Because both options were scary. "What do you want?" That question was different from the others. It wasn't logical. It was emotional. And for the first time in this entire story, I didn't have an immediate answer. I looked at the floor, thought, and tried to be honest. "I don't want to lose you." I looked back up. "But I also don't want to stay if that means you're going to feel like that again." Silence. She held my gaze, and for a second, I saw something I hadn't seen in weeks. Connection. "I don't want to lose you either," she said. And that shifted the atmosphere. But it didn't solve it. Because wanting something is not the same as being able to sustain it. "But if we try something," she continued, "I want it to come from a different place." I nodded. "What does that mean to you?" She took a deep breath. "It means we don't go back to avoiding uncomfortable conversations. Direct. That if something changes, we say it." Another pause. "Even if it hurts." That part was the hardest. And also, she looked at me. You have to understand that what you said doesn't just disappear overnight. Of course, it's going to take time for me to feel comfortable with you again, in that sense. I understand that. And I meant it, because I finally understood what was at stake. And you, she said, have to understand something too. I nodded. You can't promise that the attraction will come back the same way. Silence. Because maybe it won't. That truth hurt, but it was necessary. I know. And for the first time, I didn't try to deny it. So, she stayed quiet for a few seconds. If we try this, it has to be with that clear. No false illusions. No empty promises. Just reality. And strangely, that made it stronger. Okay, I said. Not because I was sure, but because for the first time, we were being honest. And that was something we hadn't done in months. We didn't become a couple again right away. That was the first thing that became clear. There was no dramatic reconciliation. No movie-style kiss. No, everything is fixed. Just a quiet agreement to try, but differently. And in practice, that felt strange. Because in the first few days, we didn't know how to behave. She didn't act the same with me. I didn't act the same with her. It was like talking to someone you know too well, but at the same time, not completely anymore. At first, we texted more than we saw each other. Simple messages. How was your day? Good. And yours? Normal. Safe conversations. No edges. No risk. But even that felt different. Because now every word had intention. Nothing was automatic anymore. One afternoon, she texted me something unexpected. I don't want this to turn cold. And that made me think. Because that was exactly the risk. Trying to fix something, and ending up turning it into something more distant. I replied, me neither. And that same night, we decided to see each other again. No cafe. No excuses. Just a walk. We went out when the sun was already setting. And at first, neither of us talked much. But it wasn't awkward. It was adjustment. Like learning how to walk together again. It's hard not to think about that conversation, she said suddenly. I nodded. Me too. A short silence. But it doesn't hurt the same anymore. I added. She glanced at me. Really, yeah, now it hurts more to understand it than to remember it. That made her let out a small laugh. That sounds like emotional growth or something. I smiled. It sounds like I messed up and I'm trying not to repeat it. She nodded. That's more realistic. And for the first time in a long while, the conversation didn't feel heavy. It felt human. Is it hard for you to be around me now? I asked without thinking too much. She took a moment to answer. Not because she didn't know, but because she was being honest. Sometimes. Direct. No softening. But then she added, but not exactly because of what happened. I looked at her. It's because I'm more aware of everything now. That made sense. Before, I was just with you, she continued. Now I think more. She gave a small shrug. And sometimes that's exhausting. I didn't take it personally. Because I understood exactly what she meant. When something breaks, even if it gets repaired, it doesn't feel automatic anymore. Everything gets re-examined. And that changes everything. I've been overthinking too. I admitted. She nodded. So we're equally weird right now. That sentence made both of us laugh. And it was the first genuine laugh we'd shared in a long time. We kept walking. And for a moment, everything felt almost normal. Until she spoke again. There's something I want to ask you. Her tone shifted slightly. More serious. I nodded. If this gets better, she paused. Do you think you could feel the same way again? That was the real question. The one underneath everything. I stopped for a second. And this time, I didn't want to answer quickly. Because the easy answer would be to lie. But we weren't there anymore. I think I could, I said slowly. But not in the same way. I looked at her. It would be something different. She listened in silence. More conscious. I continued. More intentional. More communication. A pause. Less automatic. She nodded. And for the first time, she didn't seem disappointed by that idea. She was just processing it. That doesn't sound bad, she said finally. And that was enough to keep the door from closing. It didn't get resolved that night. And strangely, that was the healthiest part of all. There was no closure. No final promise. Just continuation. Like a door that neither fully closes nor fully opens. We kept seeing each other. Little by little. No rush. No urge to fix everything right now. And that changed the rhythm of everything. Before, every meeting felt like a test. Now, it was simpler. Almost ordinary. But with one important difference, we weren't pretending anymore. There were good days. The kind where everything flows. Where you laugh without overthinking. Where for a moment you forget the weight of the story. And there were strange days. Days where silence showed up again. Not uncomfortable, but present. Like a shadow that hasn't decided to leave yet. One night, after dinner, we stayed on the apartment couch. The same couch. The same place. But not the same story. She was barefoot, curled into herself. I was staring at the ceiling, thinking about nothing in particular. You know what's the strangest part of all this? She asked suddenly. I looked at her. That I don't know if I'm trying to get back with you, or build something new with you. Silence. That sentence hovered between us. Because that was exactly it. There was no clear going back. No old version waiting to be restored. Just two people trying to understand what they were now. I don't know either. I replied. And for the first time, it didn't sound like uncertainty. It sounded like shared honesty. She sighed. But I like this more than before. That surprised me. I looked at her. This, yeah. She shifted a little. It's slower, but it's more real. I nodded slowly, because she was right. Before, everything was automatic, easy, but also shallow in the ways that mattered. Now, everything went through awareness, through choice, and that was exhausting, but also more solid. There was a long silence, the kind that doesn't need to be filled anymore. There are still days when I remember what you said, she said, not as a reproach, just as a fact. I nodded. I know, and it still affects me, she continued, but it doesn't define me anymore. That was huge, because she hadn't forgotten, but she had put it in its place. Thank you for not leaving completely, I said without thinking too much. She looked at me. I didn't leave completely either, and that was the most important truth of all. We hadn't completely lost each other. We had disconnected, and now, we were trying to reconnect without burning everything down again. Weeks went by like that. No big moments, no drama, just consistency, and at some point, we stopped counting the days. One afternoon, while we were walking again, she said something that stayed with me. I think the hardest part wasn't what you said. I looked at her. It was giving you another chance to be different. That hurt, but it was true, because trusting again isn't about erasing what happened. It's about deciding that even so, it's worth trying a different version, and I was learning that late, but I was learning it. Not everything improves in a straight line, and this story didn't either. There was a moment, weeks later, when almost everything seemed stable. Not perfect, but stable. We weren't walking on tension anymore. We weren't measuring every word. That awkward silence that used to fill the space was gone, but stability has quieter cracks. One night, we went out with some friends. Something simple. Dinner, a few drinks, some laughs. At first, everything was fine. She was relaxed. So was I. Until someone made an offhand comment. A joke about long relationships, physical changes, things like that. Nothing deep. Nothing intentional. But I saw her reaction. Small. Almost invisible to anyone else. But I saw it. Her smile tightened for a second, then went back to normal too quickly. I didn't say anything that night, but I felt it in the air. When we got back to the apartment, late, she took off her shoes in silence. I closed the door, and the atmosphere shifted without anyone announcing it. That wasn't a good moment tonight, she finally said. I nodded. I noticed. Silence. It bothered me, she added. And that was new. Not the pain, but the way she said it, without hiding it. I'm sorry, I replied quickly. She shook her head. It's not your fault. Pause. It's just, there are still things that trigger me. That word made me pause. Trigger. Like something inside her still reacted without permission. Do you want to talk about it? I asked. She stayed quiet for a few seconds, then sat down on the couch. I think it's not just what happened, she said. It's what it means. I looked at her without interrupting. That someone who loves you can look at you and stop desiring you. Silence again. That's not easy to forget. I nodded, because there was nothing to argue there. But I also don't want this to turn into something where I'm afraid to feel safe with you, she continued. And that was the most delicate part, because it wasn't rejection, it was process. Then tell me what you need, I said, and for the first time, not as a defense, but as a real intention. She looked at me. Not for you to fix it. Pause. But for you not to avoid it. That's where we had failed before. Avoiding. I nodded slowly. I can do that. It didn't sound like a big promise. It sounded like a small commitment, and maybe that's why it felt real. A few more days passed, and one night, for no special reason, she moved closer to me on the couch. She leaned against me, without saying anything, and I didn't move. I just stayed there. Nothing important happened. There was no deep conversation, no emotional closure, just presence. But in that moment, I understood something different. We weren't fixed. We were learning to coexist with what happened, and that, too, is a form of healing. Slower, more uncomfortable, but more real. Time stopped feeling like an enemy, and that was new. Not because everything was fine, but because we stopped trying to outrun what had happened. We started living with it, not dodging it. There were days where everything flowed with an almost deceptive normality. Quiet breakfasts, light conversations, small plans that didn't need explanations, and other days where the past slipped in without asking permission. A sentence, a gesture, a memory placed in the wrong corner, but it didn't explode anymore. It just appeared, and then we talked about it. One night, we were in the kitchen making something simple. Low music, warm lights, nothing important. And suddenly, she said, I think it doesn't hurt like before anymore. I paused for a second, but I still remember. I nodded. I don't think that goes away. She looked at me. I don't want it to disappear completely. That surprised me. Why? She leaned against the counter. Because if it disappears, then what I learned disappears too. Silence. That sentence carried more weight than it seemed. Because she wasn't just talking about us anymore. She was talking about herself. About how her view of relationships had changed. About how something painful had also made her more aware. I changed too, I said. She nodded. Yeah, but you hide it better. That made me let out a short laugh. That was unnecessarily accurate. She barely smiled, but she didn't deny it. We stayed there for a moment, not talking, just listening to the music in the background. And in that silence, there was no tension, only history. Do you think we're okay? I asked finally. She took her time to answer. Not because she didn't know, but because the word okay was too simple for what we were. I think we're better, she said, and then added, but not like before. I nodded, and for the first time, that sentence didn't hurt, because it no longer meant loss. It meant evolution. More weeks passed, and one day, without planning it, we found ourselves laughing like we used to. It wasn't forced. It wasn't an effort. It just happened. And when it did, neither of us commented on it. Because some things don't need to be analyzed to be real. One afternoon, while we were walking through the city again, she took my hand. Without announcing it. Without drama. She just did it. And I didn't feel relief. I felt continuity. Like something that had been suspended, started moving again. This isn't the same anymore, she said. I looked at her. I know. Pause. But I think it's okay like this. I nodded. Because for the first time, we didn't want to go back. We just wanted to move forward with what remained. And that was enough. There wasn't a single exact day when everything got fixed. And there wasn't one where everything ended either. It was more like a light slowly changing intensity without you noticing. Less noise. Less tension. More normality. And with time, we even stopped talking about what happened. Not because it disappeared, but because it no longer needed to be at the center of everything. One ordinary day, we were sitting on the couch. The same place where it all began, but without the same weight. She was looking at something on her phone. I was staring at the wall, lost in thought. And suddenly she said, I think I'm at peace with it now. I looked at her. With what? She smiled a little. With what you said. Short silence. I didn't forget it, she continued. But it doesn't control me anymore. I nodded slowly. And in that moment I understood something important. Not everything is overcome by erasing it. Some things are overcome by stopping the daily fight against them. I see things differently now too. I said. She looked at me. In what way? I took a second to think. I think I confused silence with comfort. Pause. And avoiding talking with being okay. She nodded. Yes, we avoided a lot. Silence. But not uncomfortable. More like, honest. Do you regret it? She asked. Not as an accusation. Just real curiosity. I thought carefully before answering. Not being honest. Pause. I regret taking so long to be honest. She looked down for a second, and then said something that closed everything without suddenly ending it. Me too. We stayed in silence. And for the first time, that silence wasn't weight. It was closure. The following weeks were simple. No big changes. No dramatic decisions. One day, while we were organizing things in the apartment, she looked at me and said, I think this is no longer a broken relationship. She paused. It's a different one. I nodded. And I felt it that way too. Not as something repaired, but as something transformed. We weren't the same, and we weren't trying to be. A few days later, she texted me in the morning. I'm moving out this weekend. No drama. No fight. No urgency. Just a decision. We saw each other that night. I helped pack some things. We talked little. Not because it was awkward, but because there was nothing left that needed to be forced. When it was done, she stood for a moment at the door. I think we did okay in the end, she said. I looked at her. We really tried. She nodded. Yeah. Pause. And that's not nothing. Silence. There was no long hug. No promise to return. No maybe in the future. Just a clear moment. Take care, she said. You take care too. I replied. And she left. The door closed. And this time, I didn't feel rupture. I felt a chapter ending. Time passed. Life moved on. Lighter. Simpler. And with the months, I understood something I didn't understand at the beginning. Not all love stories end because someone stops loving. Some end because both people learn to tell the truth too late, and still manage not to destroy each other completely. Sometimes the ending isn't an explosion. It's an honest conversation. A quiet decision. This changed, and that's okay. And that was it.